Finally tonight, Sam Cooke was that rare performer whose work seems fresh, even timely, half a century after its debut.
Hey guys, my name's Brooke and I enjoy reading about true crime, conspiracy theories, strange occurrences, etc. and sharing my findings with like-minded and curious individuals. If you feel that you fit that description, please consider hitting the subscribe button down below. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's case. Samuel Cooke was born on January 22nd, 1931 to Annie Mae and Reverend Charles Cooke in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He was one of 8 children, and considering their father was a reverend, they grew up in the church and lived a very religious lifestyle. In 1993, the family would relocate to Chicago, Illinois. From a young age, Sam was very musically inclined. At the age of only 6 years old, he and his 7 other siblings started a music group called the Singing Children. One of Sam's biggest musical influences was the popular gospel group the Soul Stirrers, and their type of music really influenced Sam's earlier works. Sam and the rest of the Cooke family began attending the Highway Baptist Church once they moved to Chicago, and Sam joined the singing group, the Highway QCs, where at the age of only 15, he climbed to the top position of a lead singer of the group. While in high school, Sam managed to get pretty much straight A's, and he was even voted most likely to succeed by his peers. He grew into the type of person that respected his elders, but he did not hesitate to stand up for himself whenever he knew that he was right. Only a few years after graduating high school, Sam would be offered the opportunity of a lifetime to join his favorite group, the Soul Stirrers, in 1950. Not only was Sam now a member of his all-time favorite musical group, but he'd also been asked to act as the lead singer. Sam decided that he would add an E to the end of his last name, officially creating a lucky stage name since it had an even 8 letters. A year after his entrance into the Soul Stirrers, the group would release their first song under Sam's leadership called Jesus Gave Me Water. They also recorded their own version of popular gospel tracks along with originals that Sam had created. The Soul Stirrers had been a relatively well-known group far before Sam came along and joined, but Sam was definitely attracting a wider audience. Young women especially started to pay attention to gospel music for the first time because, let's just say, Sam was quite the sight for sore eyes. A lot of people are familiar with the effect that Elvis Presley had on women, but a lot of people don't bring up the fact that Sam Cooke had that very same effect in Je ne sais quoi. Girls would rush up to the front of the stage at the Soul Stirrers concerts just to get a good and up-close look at Sam Cooke. After 6 successful years with the Soul Stirrers, Sam began to grow a little bit curious about the secular side of music. Since he'd attracted such a wide audience in the smaller genre of gospel music, he wondered what success he could potentially reach if he ventured into more mainstream music on his own.
You had been working in another field, had you not?
That's right, I was doing spirituals at the time, Dick.
All right, what caused you at that point in your career of 57 to turn to this kind of singing?
My economic situation.
But Sam was really worried about the stigma that came along with gospel singers transitioning into secular music. Secular music often revolves around themes and subject matters that really don't go hand in hand very well with those religious principles that Sam grew up with and was used to singing about. Some people believed that these people were selling out their faith in order to pander to mainstream media and appeal to the masses. So leaving the height of his gospel music career to venture into new territory was really a make it or break it situation for Sam. In order to avoid backlash, Sam released his first pop soul single called Lovable under the pseudonym Dale Cooke. This move would not fool his loyal fans and loved ones who could recognize his distinct vocals. The single didn't immediately rocket Sam into stardom, but it really set a good example as to the potential that he held and how successful he could be in the future. Specialty Records, who was the label responsible for the Soul Stirrers, originally supported Sam's decision to venture off into a solo career, but once they actually started listening to his music and realized it wasn't on the more rock and roll side like some other gospel singers who had ventured into secular music, they really weren't too happy with this decision. This led to a big argument which resulted in Sam and a music producer parting ways with the record label. Luckily, this bump in the road would not deter Sam from continuing his dreams, and even his very devout Christian father said that it wasn't important what Sam sang, it was important that he used the musical talent that God gave him in order to continue making people happy with his voice. A year after leaving Specialty Records, Sam managed to secure a spot on The Guy Mitchell Show, which was kind of like an old school SNL where musical guests would come on and perform their music as well as participate in comedy skits. Not long after, Sam signed to Keane Records in 1957, and he would release his first major hit called You Send Me, which his fans absolutely loved. This song beat out Elvis Presley's Jailhouse Rock at the top of the Billboard pop charts. This song single-handedly increased Sam's earnings nearly 25 times, and it was just the beginning of his success as a pop star. Over the next few years, Sam would headline concerts along with very popular artists such as Ray Charles. He would sign RCA Records, which increased his earnings by a lot, and he was releasing hits just left and right. Nearly every song he released made it to the top 40 on the charts. Over the course of his career and beyond, he sold over 10 million copies of his albums. Sam dabbled in various genres over the years, such as ballads, dance hits, and soul, but what Sam really focused on was rhythm and blues. At the time, rhythm and blues was very sexual and sensual, and Sam really brought a new twist to that, where he focused on the romanticism of his sound, creating an all-new type of R&B. But let's not forget that Sam Cooke was a black man existing during the civil rights movement, and even though he was a famous pop star, he was not excluded from many acts of racial prejudice. On one occasion, Sam and his loved ones had been traveling across the country when they had decided to stop at a Holiday Inn in Louisiana in order to lay their heads for the night. Unfortunately, the receptionist at the desk turned them away due to their color of their skin, which resulted in an argument and the police being called, claiming that Sam and his loved ones were disturbing the peace. The next day, headlines went out all over the country highlighting the fact that a black musician had to be detained for being such a nuisance, and of course this really upset the African American community. This event, among several others that Sam dealt with day after day, compelled him to write music about his experience being an African American and the experience of those all over the country and what kind of treatment they were receiving due to the color of their skin. Sam was originally scared to release this kind of music because he was afraid that his white fan base would turn against him, but after hearing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, he felt that it was time to just say his piece. One of these songs that you're probably familiar with is called A Change Is Gonna Come, and it's still to this day considered one of the greatest and most influential songs of all time. Sam's pioneering of soul music really influenced a lot of other great artists such as Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and many, many others.
I was just mesmerized. He was so cool, standing there singing, and it was so good he would laugh every now and then. You know, he was absolutely wonderful.
Throughout the years, Sam befriended many civil rights activists such as Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and NFL player Jim Brown, and together they would go around the country campaigning for racial equality. In 1953, Sam married Dolores Elizabeth Milligan, who at the time was a singer-dancer going by the stage name Dee Dee Mohawk. In November of that year, Sam and some of his fellow musicians were involved in a serious car accident which resulted in them being hospitalized, as well as the unfortunate death of Sam's chauffeur. This accident kind of marks a pattern of tragedy in Sam's life because later that same year, his ex-wife Dolores would be killed in a car accident, and although they were divorced, Sam insisted on paying for her funeral expenses and just being there for her family in the aftermath. Shortly after the divorce, Sam went on to marry Barbara Campbell, with whom he had 3 children, Tracy, Linda, and finally their son Vincent, who tragically ended up drowning in the family pool at only 18 months old. Sam was also known to be quite the womanizer from the very beginning of his career. In addition to the 3 children he had with Barbara, Sam also fathered 3 other children from 3 different women who all came forward within the same 5-week period in 1952, saying that they had given birth to Sam's children. And he actually did have to go to court and come to some sort of settlement with these women where he had to give them money. So he did in fact father these children, and they weren't just random people coming forward claiming to be his baby mamas just because he was famous. Sam was just really the type of person who always needed female companionship. In 1961, Sam created his own record label called SAR Records, where he would sign many successful artists such as the Sim Twins, the Valentinos, and Mel Carter. This would make Sam Cooke the first black artist to have his own record company, And in addition to that, he also dabbled in publishing and recording and managing. At this point in his career, Sam was living the type of life that most people can only dream of. He seemed to have it all: family, money, fame, influence. But behind the scenes, everything wasn't quite as perfect as it seems. Throughout the process of growing into a star, those who knew Sam well said that his ego grew along with his success. His ego, along with the regular use of drugs, alcohol, and escort services, led Sam to a life of loneliness despite being married and successful. But on December 11th, 1964, everything would change dramatically for Sam. Before we dive into details, I just want to say that it's still pretty unclear what exactly happened to Sam Cooke that night of December 11th, and all we really have to go off of is the statements of those who were there that night. On December 11th, Sam was enjoying his evening dining at Martoni's restaurant in Los Angeles, California, when he would meet 22-year-old Elisa Boyer. Now, some sources say that Elisa was actually an escort, and this is kind of supported by the fact that a few months after this night, Elisa was caught during a sting operation set up by undercover police officers, but her charges for prostitution were ultimately dropped due to entrapment. The reason I'm mentioning this is because a little later on in the case, it kind of relates to the motive for what happened to Sam, but we'll get to that soon. So after dining at Martoni's, Sam and Elisa make their way to a nightclub where they're drinking, chatting, and overall just having a pretty good night. After a few hours, Elisa realizes that it's getting pretty late and she's ready to call it a night, so she asks Sam if he can give her a ride home. As the two are driving in Sam's Ferrari, Elisa notices that Sam still appears to be intoxicated. He's driving really fast and kind of recklessly, and she also notices the fact that they're not heading towards her house. As they head down Harbor Freeway, Elisa notes that they're passing by several motels and hotels, and eventually they pull in to the Hacienda Hotel, which is in South Central Los Angeles. Elisa notes that this hotel is the type that charges by the hour, and Sam seems to know his way around the hotel, indicating that he'd probably been there several times before. The two go to the reception clerk, where they book a room under the names Mr. and Mrs. Sam Cooke, because of course at this point in history it's not really socially acceptable to get a hotel room with somebody who you're not married to and somebody that is not your spouse. Well, Sam sure is married all right, but this is certainly not Mrs. Cooke. Anywho, the two enter their hotel room, and Sam almost immediately begins to push Elisa onto the bed and allegedly rips off her clothes. Elisa says she was really scared at this point and felt like she was about to be assaulted, so doing the only thing she could think of, she asks Sam if she can go to the bathroom really quick, and he lets her. So she goes in the bathroom and she sees a window, which she thinks, great, I can open this window, slip out, and escape. But as soon as she goes to try to open this window, she notices that it's been freshly painted around and the paint kind of sealed the window shut, so she really has no other way to escape. Not seeing any other exit point, Elisa begrudgingly returns to the bedroom area of the room, where Sam proceeds to assault her. Afterwards, Sam goes to the restroom, and this allows Elisa another window of opportunity where she suddenly decides to grab her clothes and just run out of the room. But seeing as she was in such a hurry to get out of there, she noticed that she accidentally grabbed most of Sam's clothes as well. As she's trying to get away from this situation as fast as possible, she passes by the manager of the hotel's office and she starts banging on the door trying to get help. But seeing as it's the early hours of the morning, nobody's immediately answering, and she's worried that Sam has probably come out of the bathroom at this point, realized she's gone, and is gonna come looking after her. So at this point, she decides that it's probably just best to get the majority of her clothes back on and run away as soon as possible, in which she finds a telephone booth and calls police. Around the same time, police would receive several reports of gunshots from other guests of the hotel and residents of the surrounding area. So we're gonna jump back a second to when Sam exits the bathroom, and he realizes that Elisa has left the hotel room, and he notices that most of his clothes are gone as well, including his pants, which contained his wallet. Now this is one aspect of the case where a lot of debate comes up even to this day. Diners at Martoni's restaurant, where Sam and Elisa were dining previously that evening, claimed to see the two getting really close and comfortable at the restaurant, and a lot of people said that they weren't surprised if Elisa had gone back to the hotel willingly for some sort of transactional relationship. They also claim that Sam was being being very flashy with his money that night, and he had about $1,000 in cash, was just kind of waving it around. So with this information, some people claim that Elisa was just possibly an escort who was trying to take advantage of Sam, knowing that he was famous and that he had a lot of money. This is where I'm just going to jump in with my own opinion, where even if Elisa were an escort and even if she went to the hotel room willingly, that does not mean that she cannot be assaulted against her will. People who participate in the adult industry still have the right to bodily autonomy, and they still have the right to consent. I think it's also important to note that when police did search her purse later on, they only found a $20 bill, indicating that they don't really know what happened to that $1,000 that Sam was waving around. Maybe he spent it at the nightclub. Maybe Elisa did take it and put it somewhere else. We don't know, but there's no evidence to support the fact that she robbed him. During my research of this case, I also read a disturbing amount of Reddit posts and comments saying, well, Sam was famous and good looking. Why would he have to take advantage of somebody that way when he could get anybody he wanted? And I just want to say that these types of assaults are typically not occurring due to lack of sexual prospects. It's more to do with the power that the perpetrator feels when taking advantage of others. There are so many instances of successful people taking advantage of other individuals, especially in the entertainment industry. It's really nothing new. Now, I'm not saying Sam did or didn't do this, because I wasn't there that night and these people writing these comments weren't there that night, so I'm simply stating the theories that revolve around this case, and of course, when there's only one side of the story to be told because the other person didn't make it out alive, the public is going to tend to want to fill in those blanks. So anyways, continuing with the story, Sam at this point has just realized that Elisa is gone, his clothes are gone, and he wants to know what the hell just happened. So Sam runs out of the hotel room basically naked at this point, because all he was left with was one singular shoe and a sports jacket, both of which he put on and decided to run out into the hallway. Just naked from the waist down, pretty much. The motel manager, a woman named Bertha Franklin, was in her office at this time, and she was talking on the phone with the hotel owner when she claims that a man just started banging on her door saying, "Where's the girl?" Bertha yelled back, telling him that she was the only one in the office and that he needed to go away because she was kind of getting freaked out. Sam, being drunk, angry, and mostly naked, decides to break down this office door where he would begin to physically attack Bertha. So Sam and Bertha wrestle around on the floor a little bit before Bertha eventually manages to escape Sam's grip, and she goes to her belongings and grabs a revolver, in which she shoots Sam in what she claims to be self-defense. Sam then shouted his famous last words, "Lady, you shot me," in a confused tone rather than angry, but at this point he proceeds to get up and continue to try and physically attack Bertha. Bertha's really had enough, and she doesn't want to shoot him again, so she grabs a broom from the side of the room and begins hitting Sam on his head until he eventually falls down and passes away at the young age of 33. When police finally arrived at the scene after several calls of gunshots and Elisa's call of kidnapping, they're mainly just concerned about Bertha Franklin because, after all, she was the one with the gun. Police interviewed everybody involved at the scene, and they also spoke with the hotel owner, who was on the phone with Bertha at the time of Sam breaking in the office, and the hotel owner corroborated Bertha's story, saying that she heard the entire altercation over the phone in the background. Bertha and Elisa were both eventually given polygraph tests, which they both passed. During the court proceedings, the jury accepted Bertha's explanation as to why she felt the need to defend herself against Sam Cooke, and they understood that she was just in her office minding her own business when this man came in and was threatening her, and she basically did what she needed to do. Ultimately, the jury came to the final verdict of justifiable homicide, and with that, the homicide of Sam Cooke was case closed. But Sam's loved ones and fans were not so convinced that his death was just so cut and dry. Many people believe, even to this day, that Elisa, Bertha, and the hotel owner all planned some sort of conspiracy against Sam in order to murder him, and that the events of that night really happened very differently than their account. There was also the public concern that police were very quick to close this case case rather than doing a more thorough investigation. During Sam Cooke's funeral, Muhammad Ali was actually heard stating very loudly and proudly that if Sam Cooke had been Frank Sinatra or the Beatles or Ricky Nelson, then the FBI would have definitely gotten involved in the investigation. Prior to his funeral, singer Etta James was given the opportunity to view Sam's body, and upon seeing him and his injuries, she stated that they did not match up to Bertha's side of the story. According to the singer, Sam's body was so badly beaten up, and especially his head, to the point that it nearly looked like he was decapitated and his hands were crushed, which doesn't exactly match up with the story that he was just shot once with a bullet and hit a few times with a broomstick. There's also theories out there that Sam's manager at the time, Alan Klein, played some sort of role in his murder due to the fact that Alan Klein owned all of the rights to Sam's recordings, but there's really no evidence to support this claim. Another theory states that Sam's wife, Barbara, also had something to do with his death. Apparently, she was well aware of Sam's extramarital affairs, and she actually participated in some of her own. A local bartender that Barbara was known to have been dating actually showed up to Sam's funeral wearing some of his jewelry, which rubbed people the wrong way, understandably. Barbara also went on to marry one of Sam's backup singers only 77 days after his death. A little suspicious, I don't know. 2 funeral services were held for Sam, one in Chicago where over 200,000 fans would span 4 blocks just to get the chance to view his body. The second funeral took place in Los Angeles, California, where Ray Charles would perform his song "The Angels Keep Watching Over Me," and ultimately Sam Cooke would be laid to rest in a cemetery in Glendale, California. After the shooting, Bertha Franklin was allegedly bombarded with death threats to the point that she had no choice other than to quit her job at the Hacienda Hotel and basically move to an unknown location where nobody could find her and continue to harass her. Bertha actually ended up suing Cooke's estate for physical injuries as well as mental anguish, and Elisa went to court to testify on Bertha's behalf. Franklin ended up winning this case in 1967, and she was ultimately awarded $30,000 from Sam Cooke's estate. After his untimely death, 2 of his songs in 1 album were released, and in true Sam Cooke fashion, they immediately rocketed to the top of the charts. After his death, Cooke would be awarded several honors, including induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, among so many others. I hate to play in the middle of the field, but in this case in particular, I think it's really hard to determine what happened, especially when one major player in the situation isn't here to tell their story and version of events. Many of Sam's loved ones really questioned whether Sam was the type of person deep down who would be capable of doing the things that Elisa and Bertha accused him of, but knowing his strong personality mixed with alcohol, which took place that evening, they did see where he could kind of culminate this bad situation for himself. After all, even the most seemingly perfect individuals can hide skeletons very deep in their closet. Elisa and Bertha both did pass their polygraph tests, but I know that these are not admissible in court, meaning that they're not a great indicator of the truth. But I do question whether if Elisa was just an escort trying to scam somebody out of their money, if she would be so quick to run out of the hotel room and call the police. Also, like I mentioned earlier, she wasn't found with any suspicious amount of money, which that doesn't mean she couldn't have hid it somewhere, but on the other hand, Etta James's description of what Sam Cooke's body looked like before his funeral is extremely suspicious. Maybe Bertha downplayed the extent to which she went to defend herself that evening, or maybe there really was some sort of suspicious conspiracy going on against Sam. Cooke was a successful artist who at the time was also involved in the civil rights movement, and as we know, many activists during this period fell victim to homicide. Also, extremely interesting point, Elisa Boyer, 15 years later in 1979, was actually charged with first-degree murder after the death of her boyfriend, so something interesting to think about. Was Sam Cooke an overzealous celebrity whose ego led to his demise? Was he taken advantage of by these 2 women that night at the Hacienda Hotel? Or was something completely different going on that maybe we don't even know about? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the untimely death of Sam Cooke, aka the King of Soul, and what you believed really happened that night on December 11th. So with that, we are at the end of today's video, and I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to watch me talk about Sam Cooke. If you have any recommendations for any future topics you'd like me to talk about, go ahead and leave those down below in the comments, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!